This berry has more antioxidants than blueberries, more iron than blueberries, more calcium than blueberries, more fiber than blueberries, more manganese than blueberries. It tastes like blueberry crossed with almond, crossed with wild cherry, and it grows in places where blueberries would be dead in 6 months. No acidic soil required, no special amendments, no raised beds filled with peat moss, no pH testing kits, no sulfur applications, no babying, no fussing, no attention of any kind. It survives minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 60 below zero. The temperature where exposed skin freezes in 30 seconds, where car engines crack, where steel becomes brittle. This berry bush survives it. Produces fruit the following summer. Full crop like nothing happened. It survives drought that kills lawns, gardens, and established fruit trees. It survives clay soil, sandy soil, rocky soil, alkaline soil, soil that every blueberry bush on earth would reject and die in within 1 season. It produces 15 to 25 pounds of fruit per bush per year. For 50 to 80 years, some documented specimens have been producing for over 100 years, from a single planting, one time, one hole in the ground. Then half a century of free fruit without lifting a finger. The berry is the service berry, a Melancher alnifolia, also called Saskatoon, also called Juneberry, also called Shedbush, also called sugar plum. It has so many names because every culture that encountered it recognized it as essential and gave it their own word. When a plant has 15 names across 8 languages, that is not confusion. That is consensus. The blueberry industry generates $4.7 billion per year in the United States alone. The global berry market exceeds $14 billion. The supplement industry sells berry-based antioxidant capsules for another $3 billion. Combined, nearly $22 billion per year depends on you believing that blueberries are the king of berries and that everything else is irrelevant. The service berry outperforms blueberries on nearly every nutritional metric. It grows in conditions blueberries cannot survive. It produces longer. It costs less. It requires nothing. And you have probably never heard of it. That is not an accident. Before we get into this, if these stories matter to you, subscribe, hit the bell, and share this with someone who deserves to know what the berry industry replaced and why. The numbers first, because the numbers are where the blueberry industry's marketing collapses. A 2012 study published in the Canadian Journal of Plant Science analyzed the nutritional composition of Saskatoon berries compared to commercial blueberries. The results were not close. Service berries contain 3 to 5 times more iron than blueberries per serving iron, the mineral that 1.6 billion people on Earth are deficient in, the mineral responsible for oxygen transport in every cell of your body, the mineral that the supplement industry sells in tablets that cause constipation and nausea. A handful of service berries delivers more bioavailable iron than a handful of blueberries and an iron pill combined. Service berries contain 2 to 4 times more calcium than blueberries, calcium that your bones need, that your muscles need, that your nervous system needs, from a berry, not from a dairy industry marketing campaign, not from a calcium supplement that your body absorbs at 30% efficiency, from a fruit that grows on a bush you planted once and forgot about. Service berries contain 2 to 3 times more fiber per serving, fiber that feeds your gut microbiome, fiber that stabilizes blood sugar, fiber that the average American gets 50% less of than the daily recommendation because the modern food supply has been engineered around processed convenience instead of whole plant nutrition. Service berries contain significantly more manganese, a trace mineral critical for bone formation, blood clotting, and metabolism, more magnesium, more potassium. The mineral profile is broader and denser than blueberries across the board. And the antioxidants. Stay with me, because this is the number the blueberry marketing machine prays you never see. Service berries contain anthocyanin concentrations comparable to or exceeding highbush blueberries. A 2015 study in the Journal of Food Science measured total phenolic content and ORAC antioxidant values in Saskatoon berries and found levels that matched or surpassed commercial blueberry. The berry that grows in neglected hedgerows across Canada and the northern United States contains the same antioxidant firepower as the berry that costs $5 per pint in a plastic clamshell at Whole Foods, except the service berry does not cost $5 per pint, it costs $0 per pint. After you plant the bush, which costs $8 to $20 once, read that again. the same antioxidants, the same cancer-fighting anthocyanins, the same anti-inflammatory compounds, for free, from a bush that survives -60 and produces for half a century. While the blueberry industry charges you $260 per year for a pint a week and hopes you never discover the bush growing wild in the ditch outside your subdivision, now the history, because this is where it gets infuriating. Every indigenous nation across the northern half of North America knew this berry. Every single one. The Cree called it Missisquattaman. The Blackfoot called it Okikani. The Salish harvested it in quantities that European explorers could not believe. Pemmican, the original survival food that sustained indigenous peoples and later saved European fur traders from starvation, was made from dried service berries, pounded together with bison fat and dried meat. Pemmican was the energy bar of the 1700s, the protein bar of the frontier, the meal replacement that kept human beings alive through 8-month winters that killed the unprepared in weeks. And the primary fruit ingredient was the service berry, not because it was the only berry available, because it was the best berry available, the most calorie-dense, the most nutritious, the most reliable producer, the one that fruited every single year, without fail, regardless of drought, late frost, poor soil, or brutal winter. The fur trade that built the Canadian economy literally ran on pemmican. The Hudson's Bay Company purchased tens of thousands of pounds of pemmican annually from indigenous suppliers. Voyageurs paddling 16 hours a day across the continent consumed pemmican as their primary calorie source. Without pemmican, the fur trade collapses. Without service berries, pemmican does not exist. This berry did not just feed families, it powered the economic engine of an entire continent for 200 years. Lewis and Clark ate service berries during their expedition. They wrote about them in their journals. Meriwether Lewis documented the berry in July 1805 and noted its abundance and sweetness. The most famous exploration in American history was partially fueled by a berry that modern America cannot name. European settlers learned this immediately. They watched indigenous food practices. They asked questions. They adopted them. The service berry became a staple of pioneer homesteads across the northern Great Plains, the Pacific Northwest, and the Canadian prairies. Settlers planted serviceberry hedgerows along property lines as living fences that also produced food. Dual purpose, boundary marker, and grocery store in one row of bushes. They made pies, jams, syrups, wines, and dried fruit that stored through winter without refrigeration or canning. They fed their families from a bush they planted once and never thought about again. Every homestead manual from the 1800s mentions serviceberry. Every pioneer journal from the northern plains describes gathering them. Every oral history from frontier families includes serviceberry pie as a seasonal celebration. This was not a niche foraging curiosity. This was a primary food source for an entire generation of Americans who built a country from dirt and willpower. The name serviceberry itself comes from pioneer funeral culture. The bush blooms in early spring when the ground finally thaws enough to dig graves after winter. Church services for people who had died during winter were held when the serviceberry bloomed. The berry is literally named after death and resurrection. After survival, after making it through the worst and being rewarded with fruit on the other side. So what happened? How does a berry that sustained entire civilizations for thousands of years, that fed pioneer families across a continent that outperforms blueberries on nearly every metric, disappear from American awareness? The blueberry happened. In the early 1900s, a woman named Elizabeth White in New Jersey partnered with USDA botanist Frederick Coville to domesticate the wild highbush blueberry. By the 1920s, they had developed cultivated varieties suitable for commercial production. The New Jersey blueberry industry was born. Then Michigan, then Oregon, then Georgia. The blueberry had something the serviceberry did not. It had a marketing machine. The blueberry industry invested heavily in nutritional research, branding, and consumer education starting in the 1990s. The term superfood was practically invented for blueberries. The Wild Blueberry Association of North America alone spends millions annually on marketing. Every health magazine ran blueberry features. Every morning show did blueberry segments. Every nutritionist put blueberries on their top 10 list. Blueberries, blueberries, blueberries. Everywhere you looked for 30 years straight, the marketing spend was relentless, calculated, and devastatingly effective. By 2000, the American consumer believed blueberries were the healthiest berry on earth. By 2010, blueberries had become the second most popular berry in America, behind strawberries. Consumption tripled in 2 decades. Not because the berry got better, because the marketing got louder. Nobody was marketing the serviceberry. Nobody was funding serviceberry studies. Nobody was putting serviceberry on magazine covers. The serviceberry had no industry association, no marketing budget, no lobbyist in Washington, no branded clamshell package with a smiling cartoon berry on the label. It had 5,000 years of indigenous knowledge, 200 years of pioneer tradition, and nutritional data that embarrassed the blueberry. It did not matter. Money won. The USDA invested millions in blueberry breeding programs. Dozens of cultivated blueberry varieties were developed for commercial production. Disease resistance, shelf life, uniform ripening, machine harvestability. Every trait that the commercial supply chain needed was bred into the blueberry with taxpayer-funded research. The serviceberry received almost nothing. A handful of Canadian research programs. A few cultivars developed at the University of Saskatchewan, no federal American breeding program. No commercial cultivar development, no supply chain investment. The USDA essentially chose winners and losers in the berry market using public research dollars, and the serviceberry lost, not on merit, on politics, on lobbying. On which berry already had an industry behind it demanding more support. Canada understood what America ignored. Saskatchewan province developed a commercial Saskatoon berry industry starting in the 1970s. Canadian Saskatoon production exceeds 2 million pounds annually. Canadian researchers have developed over a dozen named cultivars optimized for commercial harvest: Thiessen, Smoky Martin, Northline Honeywood, each bred for large fruit size, consistent yield, and outstanding flavor. These cultivars are available to American gardeners right now. You can order them online. You can plant them this spring. The breeding work is done. The varieties exist. The plants are available. The only thing missing is the American consumer knowing they exist. And here's where the economics make the blueberry industry nervous. A blueberry bush costs $8 to $15 at a nursery. It requires acidic soil with a pH between 4.5 and 5.5. Most American garden soil runs between 6.0 and 7.5. To grow blueberries, you must amend the soil with sulfur, peat moss, or acidifying fertilizer. Annual cost of pH management, $15 to $40 per year. Every year, forever. Because the soil naturally reverts to its native pH. A blueberry bush produces for 15 to 20 years under good management, requires regular pruning, requires bird netting, requires consistent moisture, because blueberry root systems are shallow and drought sensitive. 1 week of missed watering during fruit development can collapse the entire crop. A serviceberry bush costs $8 to $20 from a nursery. It grows in any soil pH from 5.0 to 8.0. Which is essentially any soil in North America. No amendments required. 0. You dig a hole. You put the bush in the hole. You fill the hole. You walk away. The serviceberry produces for 50 to 80 years. It does not require pH management. It does not require acidifying fertilizer. It does not require consistent moisture because its root system penetrates deep enough to find water during drought. It requires essentially 0 pruning to produce heavy crops. Birds do eat the berries. But serviceberry bushes produce so abundantly that there is enough for you and every bird in the neighborhood. Blueberry 25-year cost, $8 bush, plus $25 per year soil amendments, plus $15 per year fertilizer, plus $10 per year bird netting. Total, $1,258. Serviceberry, 50-year cost, $15, bush. Total, $15. $1,258 for 20 years of blueberries that need constant attention. pH testing every spring. Sulfur applications, acidifying fertilizer, pruning every winter. Bird netting every June, panic watering every dry week. And at year 20, the bush declines and you start over from 0. $15 for 50 years of serviceberries that need nothing. No testing, no amending, no acidifying, no panic. No decline at year 20. The bush is still accelerating production at year 20. It does not even peak until year 15 to 25. While the blueberry bush is dying, the serviceberry bush is entering its prime. And the serviceberry has more iron, more calcium, more fiber, the same antioxidants, from a bush that costs 1% as much over its lifetime. Read that again. And ask yourself why the extension service in your county has never once recommended serviceberry to a home gardener now. Honesty, because without it, everything else is just marketing in a different voice. Serviceberries are not blueberries. The flavor is different. If you hand someone a serviceberry and they expect a blueberry, they will be confused. Serviceberries have a nuttier, earthier, more complex flavor with an almond undertone from the small seeds. Some people prefer it to blueberries, some people do not. Flavor is subjective. You will not know until you taste one. Fresh serviceberry shelf life is short. 3 to 5 days refrigerated, shorter than blueberries. This is the real reason they never entered the commercial supply chain. Blueberries were bred for shelf life. Serviceberries were not. They bruise easily. They do not ship well across 2,000 miles in a refrigerated truck. This is a legitimate commercial limitation, not an industry conspiracy. But you are not running a commercial operation. You are growing food in your yard, and shelf life does not matter when the bush is 20 feet from your kitchen. You pick them, you eat them, same day. Maximum nutrition, zero supply chain. Serviceberries can be affected by cedar apple rust in regions where eastern red cedars grow nearby. The fungus causes orange spots on leaves and can reduce fruit quality. Resistant cultivars like Thiessen and Smoky minimize this issue. But if you live surrounded by cedar trees, know that this is a factor, not a deal breaker, a factor. Birds love serviceberries aggressively. If you have a single bush, birds may take 50 to 80% of the crop before you harvest. The solution is volume. Plant 3 to 5 bushes, the birds take their share. You take yours, there is enough. Netting works too, but is unnecessary if you plant enough bushes to share. A row of 5 bushes produces 75 to 125 pounds of fruit per year. The birds can have 30 pounds, you keep 90. Everybody eats. Here is your action plan. Buy 3 to 5 serviceberry bushes from a nursery. Named cultivars are better than generic seedlings. Thiessen produces the largest fruit. Smoky is the most widely planted commercial variety in Canada and the most reliable all-around performer. Martin produces heavy crops of dark, sweet fruit. Northline stays compact at 6 to 8 feet tall, perfect for smaller yards. Plant in full sun to partial shade. Serviceberry tolerates shade better than almost any other fruiting shrub, but full sun produces the heaviest crops and sweetest berries. Dig a hole twice the width of the root ball. Plant at the same depth the bush sat in the nursery pot. Water thoroughly at planting. Water weekly through the first summer. After year 1, stop watering entirely unless you live in extreme desert conditions. The root system handles it from there. Do not amend the soil. The serviceberry does not need your compost, your fertilizer, your peat moss, your sulfur, or your pH tester. It evolved in wild prairie and forest edge soils with no human intervention for millions of years. Trust it. Your soil is fine. Whatever it is, clay, sand, gravel, limestone, the serviceberry does not care. It just grows. Year 1 and 2, light fruit production. Let the bush establish. Eat what it gives you, and let the rest feed the birds. Year 3 to 5, production ramps up. 5 to 10 pounds per bush. Year 5 to 10, full production. 15 to 25 pounds per bush per year. Year 10 to 50 and beyond, the bush gets bigger and produces more every decade. A mature serviceberry can reach 15 to 25 feet tall and 15 feet wide. It becomes a small tree, a beautiful ornamental with white spring blossoms that cover the branches like snow, blue-purple summer fruit hanging in clusters, and brilliant orange-red fall foliage that rivals any maple. And the fruit is versatile in ways blueberries cannot match. Fresh off the bush, frozen for smoothies, dried like raisins for trail mix and baking, cooked into pies that pioneer families called the best dessert on the frontier. Pressed into syrup that tastes like blueberry almond, heaven. Fermented into wine that Canadian winemakers have started producing commercially. Made into jam that sells for $12 per jar at farmers markets in Saskatchewan. Every preservation method that works for blueberries works for serviceberries, plus drying, which serviceberries do better than blueberries because their lower moisture content produces a superior dried product closer to a raisin than a shriveled grape. The pioneers dried serviceberries by the bushel and stored them in canvas sacks through winter. No sugar added, no refrigeration, no canning equipment, just sun-dried berries that kept for months and tasted like candy when you chewed them around a fire in January. Try that with a fresh blueberry. It molds in a week. It is one of the most visually stunning landscape plants in North America, and most homeowners plant ornamental trees that produce nothing when they could. Plant a serviceberry that produces 25 pounds of superfood per year while looking just as beautiful. Your neighborhood is full of ornamental Bradford pears that produce zero food, smell terrible, and snap in half during ice storms. Ornamental crabapples that produce bitter fruit nobody eats. Japanese maples that look pretty and do nothing else. Every one of those trees could be a serviceberry. Every single one, producing food, feeding birds, feeding families, for 50 years, while looking gorgeous doing it. The nursery industry sells ornamental trees for beauty. The serviceberry gives you beauty and food. The nursery industry just never mentions the food part because ornamental trees need replacing every 15 to 20 years when they fail. A serviceberry never needs replacing. One sale, one time, and the customer disappears for half a century. The blueberry industry spent a century making you believe one berry was king. They funded the studies, they ran the campaigns, they put blueberries on every magazine cover and every superfood list. They convinced an entire country that one berry grown in acidic soil on bushes that live 20 years was the pinnacle of fruit nutrition. Meanwhile, a bush that survives -60 degrees grows in any soil on the continent, produces for 50 to 80 years, contains more iron, more calcium, more fiber, and equal antioxidants, sat in wild hedgerows and abandoned homesteads across North America, fruiting every June, feeding birds, feeding deer, feeding everyone except the humans who forgot it existed. The Cree did not forget. The Blackfoot did not forget. The Salish did not forget. The pioneer families who survived winters on pemmican did not forget. 5,000 years of human knowledge across an entire continent, erased by 100 years of blueberry marketing and one industry association with a budget bigger than most countries spend on agriculture. The bush does not care about marketing. It does not know about industry associations or superfood rankings or branded plastic clamshells. It just fruits. Every June, same bush, same roots, same spot of ground. For 50 years, for 80 years, for 100 years if nobody disturbs it, it fruited before the blueberry industry existed. It fruited before grocery stores existed. It will fruit long after the last superfood trend burns out and the last antioxidant supplement bottle collects dust in a medicine cabinet. 3 bushes, $45. 50 years of free berries that outperform the $5 pint at Whole Foods on every metric that actually matters. The pioneers knew. The indigenous nations knew for 5,000 years before the pioneers arrived. Now you know, plant them. If this opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps spread this. The next one drops soon.